So welcome back to the Leadership Edge Conversations series. We have Michael here, who authored another article this month, the last of this year, 2024, and the topic is the power of reflection. So I want to dive right into what reflection is, maybe some of the misconceptions, and how it could be a catalyst for a leader's growth. So Michael, why do you think the process of reflection, especially in leadership, is often overlooked or undervalued?
Simply because busy is a badge of honor for most professionals, especially leaders. You ask somebody, how have you been? And almost immediately what you hear is, well, I've been really busy. And we sort of look at each other and we say, you've been busy, I've been busy, we all been busy. We're busy, busy, busy. What most leaders don't know is busy usually goes with another B word called beta brainwave states. So beta brainwave states, which are really good brainwave states in its more relaxed nature. It's when you're woken to the five senses and you're really engaged in what you're doing. But oftentimes, people are in what's called high beta brainwave states, which are driven by cortisol and adrenaline. And when you're in those brainwave states, you're not able to reflect. And the goal is, as we talk about in many of our programs, our leadership programs, we want to get leaders into alpha brainwave states, where they're calm, they're relaxed, they're fully engaged, they're engaged with the five senses, but they're seeing more with insight than just natural sight. Reflection can only really happen and happen effectively if you're in alpha, theta, or even delta brainwave states where you're asleep and you're relaxed.
Generally, alpha might be the beginning or end of our days, generally, whereas when we enter work, we see our email, we see the to-do list, we're going to be getting into beta and then high beta.
Yeah, and you feel it. You feel it usually right underneath your breastplate. That's where you feel that energy, that it's a stress-induced energy. And then that goes to your brain and your mind starts working really fast. And if you stay in those states for too long, you start losing memory, you start becoming a little more irritable, you start feeling like everything is the biggest thing in the world. And getting people to start reflecting can be very difficult at first, but once people start reflecting, you see massive changes and an increase in productivity.
So we've intentionally chosen this topic for the end of the year because if any point a leader is going to do it, it's likely here. They may be taking some time off at the end of the year, squeezing in the last PTO. They're with family. They may have some downtime in between the holidays. We're really wanting to take advantage of that to not only see if leaders can attempt it, but also to say, hey, this is something that you can do more frequently than just a yearly vacation or around the new year. In the article you wrote, jumping a little ahead, you talk about how reflection takes courage and objectivity. Share a little bit about a personal experience where you started embracing this mindset and it shifted or kickstarted or transformed something in you as a leader.
Part of what I had to do years ago before I started high performance was I had to be honest and courageous in my reflection about my organization because I did not want to face the facts. I didn't want to face the truth. I wanted to take the emotions that I felt in that toxic environment and sort of push them to the side or just mitigate them instead of using my left brain where logic and reason are applied and saying, looking at the logic that this was a toxic culture and it was not going to change. When you reflect on something like that, you have to have the courage then to say, either I am going to allow this to persist or I'm going to do something about it.
So that leads us to our next question. You encourage leaders to reflect logically before exploring the emotions. Tell us a little bit about how the structured approach you mapped out. Logic first, evaluate those emotions, replace negative with positive. Tell us about that structured approach and why it's so helpful.
If we're not intentional about taking something, looking at something logically, as you would a math problem, for example, we would look at something and maybe it causes a trigger for us emotionally, and that emotion then overwhelms us and we start to repattern our thought process for the future by the patterns of the past. Let's say, for example, you write down that this is a toxic environment and the people here have never gotten my back and I've never felt supported here. And then you start going backwards. And I remember this time and 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 this time. And before you know it, you're spun out of control. You're in high beta Brainwave states. You're ready to march against the castle and get a whole army behind you. And you have to discipline your emotion. And we have to remember that emotions they are often patterns of the past that we have felt, these chemicals, and we're reminded of those when we have a something written down in front of us that would trigger a memory. And so it's important that we take the emotion out of it. Then, once we have written it down and we have reviewed it logically, and we look at all the variables that create this situation or this circumstance, then you start looking at the emotions. Well, why do I feel this way? Why did I feel this way about this situation? And often what we find is when we look at the patterns of the past as well, we're only about 50% right. We want the energy and motion to be controlled by logic and reason as we pattern the future, and we don't want emotions to cause us to be out of control with our logic and reason, which happens far too often with far too many leaders.
Now, once you kind of map out with logic, and then you start to look at those emotions, there could be positive ones, there could be some negative ones, such as guilt or shame, regret. How do we start the process of replacing those negative emotions with gratitude, hope, thanksgiving, joy, or even peace within a storm?
When we have reflected on something that maybe brought us a little bit of pain, maybe there's regret, it's so easy to start to shame yourself. Well, you are such a failure. I can't believe that you couldn't get this done. I mean, goodness gracious. Instead of having a little bit of grace and saying, hey, you didn't get it done. Okay? Or asking yourself, if something happened, what if it was a gift? This is a question I love to ask myself when I go through trials and difficulties. What if it was a gift? What if all these things were a gift? What would the answer be then? Because what I've got to do to replace this negative emotion in order to move forward in a positive way is I have to have this elevated emotion. Well, what's better than despair? That's hope. I just talked to a client about this yesterday. I said, you need to ask yourself 9 or 10 follow-up questions for every reflection question. You ask yourself, what is it that I did not accomplish last year? I didn't get it done because I was undisciplined. That's not a very good answer. So why were you undisciplined? I was undisciplined because I had too many things on my plate. What were the too many things on your plate? You start writing that down. Why were these things not as important as the thing that you wanted to accomplish? And you start writing that down. Where would I put this in the structure of importance? Well, I'd put it at a 5. Well, why would you put it at a 5? And you keep going down. And pretty soon, this quote unquote failure was rooted in something that was not in alignment with your purpose. And that's usually where we fall short, is when some activity is not in alignment with our ultimate purpose. We do not put the time and attention to it. However, if in our logic we put it up as one of the top priorities, yet it doesn't align with our purpose, something's going to give.
Yeah, the idea of asking one and then asking 9 more to really get to the root of things, of where there's some sort of action that isn't aligned with your purpose, that's like coaching. Yeah. And for someone who wants to cultivate or sustain a habit of reflection, they may benefit from a coach to get that process kickstarted, because essentially that's what happens in a coaching session. They come with a challenge, the coach just starts to inquire. Yeah. Starts to ask a little deeper. Well, why did that happen? Well, tell me more about this. And then at some point, typically the challenge that a leader's facing is a misalignment of actions, priorities with purpose.
And yes, the coaching methodology is about drawing out what is in the depth of myself. But I would venture to hypothesize that most people only know themselves at about a 30% depth. Because we don't ask ourselves these deeper questions. Most people don't know what their purpose is. They have no idea what their own vision is for their life. They don't know what they want. Yeah. And you must ask these questions, which is why the discipline is vital, to take the time to reflect, and way more than once a year.
So to conclude, looking forward to how a leader can build that habit, let's say that they take a time around Christmas or New Year's or the end of the year, where they're going to give an hour. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to that person once they finish for how they can take a next step to make this a more frequent habit?
If you're going to do this for 1 hour at this time of year, it's just one question. Did I tell the story I wanted to tell with my day? Am I going to tell the story I want to tell with my day tomorrow? What's my plan for tomorrow? Take 15 minutes every day, 1 hour once a week, 3 hours once a month, and then 3 days at the end of the year to really take time to reflect in depth and ask yourself questions. You can just do it as you're going about your day as well. You can be productive while you're in a reflective state.
But it takes intentionality to shut off that noise.
It does.
Is, typically important because noise, I think, equates to that high beta, at least in my mind.
It does, and I have a little trick that I brought with me. These bad boys right here. Earplugs. When I need to reflect, I'll put in earplugs and I'll take some deep breaths and then I'll reflect.
I think what I hear you saying is the clarity that comes from really nailing down when you ask those questions in reflection, what the core of an unsuccessful goal over the course of the year. That experience is going to kickstart someone, get them hungry, get them excited to continue. And so giving them themselves a chance for one experience of reflection.
What separates good from great leaders is emotional intelligence, which starts with self-awareness. People don't know themselves very well. How do you lead well if you don't know yourself?
Or if you don't watch the film.
If you don't watch the film, you don't look back and say, okay, hey, here's what went well, here's what didn't, and here's what I'm going to do to amend this moving forward. But again, it's the biggest struggle to get people to sit down and actually reflect, because if they're not busy and don't have the busy badge of honor, they feel like they're not worth their weight. And that's the biggest lie of all. It's not the time you put in, it's what you put in the time. If you put the good energy into the time that you have, that time will produce 10, 50, and 100 times what you put in. And that's where we've got to be able to take a step back first, get away from the busy, take the time and lean into the power of reflection.
Congrats on completing 2024.
Hey,
thanks for the conversation.
Yeah,
see you next
awesome.
time.
Coming in spring 2025, we're launching the High Performance Membership Site, a game-changing platform with exclusive tools, resources, and connections to help you lead with impact. I'd also like to share my new book, The Leadership Edge. If you like what you've seen in the leadership action steps each month, this book contains all of that and much, much more. I wrote this book to help those in leadership positions, as well as those who are aspiring to be leaders, help others and yourself develop into a leader that will always have the leadership edge. If you'd like more information on where to purchase your copy, or if you'd like to purchase bulk copies, please reach out to us at highperformancehbk.com.